His family was basically dislocated from the country of Kosovo due to the uprising that was going on there. His son was killed within Kosovo due to the conflict and the fighting that was going on. And at that time, they decided to come to a different country. And they left, and it was a pretty good struggle. And eventually, they did get to the United States. Canada was also thought at one time they may end up there. And as they got into this country here and relocated, Lutheran Social Services is the one that basically got them into Bismarck or into North Dakota and got them established here. And once that all happened, then they also got some of the congressional forces working with them, along with Basin Electric's cooperation. He was offered a job here at Basin Electric in the maintenance department. So he worked with us for about 10, 11 years. Brought his family here. At first they lived in an apartment, eventually he bought a house, kind of went through the whole American dream, if you will. And he also became a U.S. citizen a good 6, 7 years ago, along with the majority of his family members at the same time. Something that he was also early on, like Kelly had mentioned, we did have a translator here because it was pretty difficult to tell him to go do this and do that without explaining step-by-step process. And we had to do that a lot of times. And he was quick to learn, quick to catch on, and once he got there, he got there. But we did use an interpreter for probably the first 6 months to a year to get him to a level we could trust him and kind of let him go on his own.
It's kind of crazy that he was able to start communicating that quickly, I think.
I remember we had a little sheet that had some Albanian phrases on it and translated into American, and one of them was Mirdita, which means good day in Albanian. And the first day he was here, I said that to him, and right away he was pretty interested that he recognized something. But he did learn English very quickly. I mean, he did a real good job and understood everything that he wanted to understand. So he did a good job.
He didn't have a lot to give, but he'd give you what he had.
Oh, yeah.
He would definitely buy an egg sandwich for you, and if he was broke or whatever, he'd make you take it too. You'd say no, no, and he'd yes, yes. That's one thing. If you did anything for Tefik, he remembered it forever. So.
And I know, like Daryl, every Thanksgiving, Daryl would always take a turkey out, for Tefik's family. Did that, and I know Kim gave him a lot of geese, which at some point he shut Kim down because he could only eat so much geese, or goose. But
and he did it very politely. I mean, it was he wanted to be a recipient, but enough was enough, and he finally said there were. Goose, shoe, same, he says. You evidently run into a tough one somewhere along the line, so my outlet for wild geese was gone.
That's funny.
And like Bruce would go out on a yearly basis and blow his sprinkler lines out. I would give him a deer or two on a yearly basis, for the family. So just kind of a lot of camaraderie amongst the employees down in this area here, and we always kept them included and stuff. And knowing how much of a challenge and a struggle it had to be to leave your home country at age 60, bring your family here, start with nothing, in attempt to make it. So you have to give him a lot of credit for all that.
So how old was he when he died?
73 years old when he passed away.
And we kept asking him when he was retired, and he'd say, "Oh, pretty soon. It would be a year or 2 years, or maybe next week." And if he needed any time off, it wasn't a heads up. He'd come in and he'd tell Dad, "I gone tomorrow." It was right on the spot.
Tefik was always interested in you and what was going on in your life. He'd always ask you what your son or daughter was up to, and kept track of what was going on. And he did really well, because I hear that from a lot of people. And there's 350 people in this building, and he kept track of every one of them and found out what their kids were doing when he was changing their life. So he was up on it.
That, and when he finally started going to the doctors around here, he'd come back and he'd say, "Doctor's mafia." He said, "Take all your money." So he had some teeth work done, and he was supposed to have it done here in the States, and he got a price for it, and he couldn't believe what they wanted to do some fixing on his teeth. So he saved up, and when they went back to Kosovo, he had all his teeth fixed for what they wanted to do one here. So he says, America, Kosovo, the doctors in Kosovo are okay, the ones here are mafia. So that was a good joke for a while too.
Yeah.
One of the last times I talked to him, he asked me about my youngest son he'll be a dentist in May, and he wanted to know how he was doing. And I said, well, in May he'll be in the mafia, so you can get your teeth fixed, you know. And he was sick. He was really sick, but he still got a kick out of that, or caught the joke, or knew what I was talking about. So he was, yeah, he had a sense of humor right up to the end.
He'll be greatly missed for a long time. John Wayne in our books.
Yeah.
He had a cowboy hat that I gave him when he first come. He wanted to be a cowboy, and he said John Wayne. He must have seen a movie or something. So I had an older cowboy hat, and I brought it in, and he thought he was the champion with that thing. And on his dying bed in the hospital, we took it up there, and his daughter put it on his head, and he managed to smile and laugh under his mask. And then they hung it up by the TV so he could see it when he opened his eyes. And he was pretty proud of being American.
And if you look at the grounds and the buildings, interior, exterior, here at the headquarters complex, he was a big part of that. Very meticulous, wanted to do the right thing, and very proud of how the buildings look. So he was part of that whole process, along with a lot of the other guys, to do that. And if he ran out of work to do or whatever, that's where he would kind of fall back on and do some of that little tedious stuff, if you will, and had that type of pride.
Anybody
And
else?
he could trim trees. He did all the hedges around here in the trees, and he did it immaculately. I mean, they were to the T. If there was one little piece out, he'd be over there cutting it with the scissors. And he did Mel's up in the cafeteria. He went over to her house because she said, "Could you come over and trim my trees?" And he'd jump at it, and she was going to pay him and stuff. And she said when he walked up there and he got to her house and looked at him, he goes, "Oh, no good." She said he worked on it for a few days to get them all cleaned up and trimmed up. But yeah, he was immaculate. Whatever he did it to the T. He got her done right. And you could see that around the headquarters building with all the trees and the evergreens and stuff trimmed to perfection.
At the last there, when he was sick, there was 3 of us cutting trees, and he said it takes 1 Tefik to do that. 3 of us.
That's cute.
Yeah, 1 Tefik. We
Yeah.
heard that a
Yeah.
lot.
Oh,
Mini
yeah.
big boss, 1 Tefik.
Mini big boss.
Mini big boss, 1 Tefik.